What a great question. Legacy is such an interesting word because I think people worry too much about their legacy. The legacy will be determined later. That's what legacy means. It's not really something I can plan for, but I will be curious to see. Um, there's some obvious things here. We've opened up a couple major award-winning exhibits during my tenure. The Land of the Tiger and the African Forest. They're exhibits I think the whole team is proud of. We've done smaller projects like the Penguin exhibit, which has so many fans and people love that. But in my mind, those are things we've done as a team. It's not my legacy, it's the legacy of the team here. When I started here, there was no conservation department and there was no animal wellness department. We were a little behind the times there. We've got a conservation department started now that's saving wildlife all over the world. That's really exciting, particularly the part of the world that's right here in Florida, the work we're doing with manatees. So it's really great to have been a part of that. I've done a lot of mentoring and coaching and teaching, and nobody wears a little plaque on their forehead that says mentored by Tony Vecchio. But I would like to think I've helped a lot of people who are going to make a big difference in the future. I'd love, if that was my legacy and nobody even knows it was I had anything to do with it, I'd be okay with that. But just knowing that the future is in good hands means a lot to me. I'm going to do a lot of traveling. I've been working my whole life, it seems like, to save wildlife in wild places, and haven't had enough time to visit them and observe the wildlife and visit the wild places. So I'm going to do a lot of traveling. When I'm not traveling, which you really can't do all the time, I'll be working in my yard. My yard is a certified wildlife habitat by the National Wildlife Federation. So the more wildlife friendly I can make it, the better. That's being out there with my hands in the dirt is therapy for me. I've loved animals my whole life. I wanted to be a general curator. General curator is the kind of the top person in charge of the animal collection and the zookeepers. And I finally got my job as a general curator at a small zoo, and shortly after I started, the director left, and they asked me to step in as interim director, and there was no stepping back. So that was 35 years ago, and I've been a director ever since. But like most kids, I grew up loving animals. Unlike most kids, I didn't grow out of that phase. And so I started working in a zoo when I was 14 years old. Too young to work with animals, but just being at the zoo every day was a great experience. So I was working in food service, boxing popcorn and making snow cones and doing those kind of jobs. And then from there, with schooling and more moving up in the zoo, I finally got to the director position. No matter what your passion is, whatever you're doing, give 110%. I worked in a lumber company. I was a baker. I dug ditches for a while. I have just found the harder you work, the more opportunities that open up for you. And you mix that hard work with whatever your passion is, and they seem to converge. That, to me, that's the secret. Never just give half an effort to a job and say, well, this isn't really what I want to do. If you give a half an effort, you're never going to do what you want to do. Give everything you got to whatever you're doing at that time. I remember in third grade, I saw a little cartoon that wasn't very funny at the time. I thought it was hilarious. It was a kid on a giraffe. He was riding on a giraffe. He was up at the giraffe's head, and he was putting a book back on the shelf at the library that said, I want to be a zoologist, or something like that. And I remember taking that to my teacher and said, that's what I want to do. I didn't even know what the word zoologist meant, but I knew it had something to do with animals, and I remember that cartoon made a really big impression on me. That's the job I want. But funny story about my growing up. I grew up in a very urban environment in Pittsburgh. Not a lot of wildlife opportunities. But I had an aunt that was a teacher and a librarian who really encouraged me. And she would take me to the Carnegie Museum every Saturday. Not an animal, not a zoo, but a museum. The zoos were pretty crappy in those days. The museum was highly respected. And she would take me to the museum and we'd spend time there, and then she would take me to the library afterwards and encourage me to find books about the things we had just seen in the museum. And the more we did that, the more I realized this is what I want to do. The more I learned about animals, the more I was committed to, that's what I want to be when I grow up. Depending on where you are, most cities have a zoo. Do a little research, find the nearest accredited zoo, and volunteer. I've met so many successful people in the zoo business that have essentially grown up in a zoo. When you're young, you can take classes at the zoo and go from preschool programs to summer camps, and then as soon as you've kind of graduated from all those education programs, you can volunteer at the zoo. And a lot of people, I've met so many people that started their zoo career as volunteers at the local zoo. If you don't have an accredited zoo in your area, or if they don't need any more volunteers, there's so many other ways you can volunteer for state parks. You can volunteer at a local veterinary hospital, animal sanctuaries. There are lots of ways you can get involved. Every day I get to go to the zoo. I tell people, greatest job in the world. I get to go to the zoo every day and they pay me for it. There was one day I was giving a tour to an elderly couple who had donated to our Land of the Tiger exhibit. And I took them back to meet the tigers, which is, what an experience, face to face, looking in the eyes of a tiger. Incredibly powerful, incredibly moving, and we finished that. And I asked if they had another, few minutes, and they said, well, we're on a tight schedule, but we have 5 minutes. And I said, well, come with me, and I took them over and introduced them to the Visayan warty pigs and gave them some long-handled scratching brushes, and they started scratching the pigs. And the woman started crying, and she said, that is the most moving animal experience I've ever had. And that just warmed my heart, because you see a tiger, you're never going to hug that tiger, or maybe once, but it'll be a short experience. But I realize how valuable it is to be able to interact with animals, and for that woman to be able, what she was doing was giving joy to an animal with physical contact, and that's life-changing. A zoo director is supposed to be like a parent. I'm not supposed to have any favorite animal. I won't play that game. I have favorite animals, and in this case the Visayan warty pigs are my favorite. They truly are. I was not a pig guy for most of my career, and then at one point I got an opportunity to serve on the pig advisory group, only because no one on the staff wanted the job, and I thought we should be represented on all the committees that are working to save animals. So I took the job and started going to the meetings. And I learned a lot about pigs, including how endangered many pig species are, how smart they are. And you look at a pig, you can't help but fall in love. They're beautiful animals, but also very smart, affectionate animals. And to learn that those magnificent creatures are in tremendous threat. Conservation status for most of the pig species is pretty bleak. So I really started to fall in love with pigs. I'm so proud of the zoo. My first few years, I was pretty quiet about the fact. I would say things like, we have a very good zoo here and we can even be a great zoo. But I'm a little less humble now, as I've seen what we can do at Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens. They're a great botanical garden as well as a great zoo. I have no doubt in my mind Jacksonville Zoo and Gardens can be the best in the country, if not the world. I think we are already a great facility. I think we can be the best zoo and gardens. Me leaving doesn't make any difference at all. We have a team here that is so passionate and so dedicated and so professional, and everything is just going in the right direction. I just had a nice chat with our project manager, and I didn't even realize, but he said one of the things we've talked about is that every project we do here, we want to raise the bar. We want it to be better than the last one. And quite frankly, the last 2 projects we did won awards for being the best in the country. So when you're already doing things like that and you want to do even better, there's nothing that's going to stop this place from being the best zoo and gardens in the country. And I'm excited about coming back to see that.